Andre, a very warm welcome. Unfortunately, I did not find any background that would represent you better than this, what we can see here, which is such a global, let's say, environment. And as I don't exactly know where you are right now, I would just simply love to introduce you briefly. Andre Blom, the first that I would actually like to express is a very, very good friend of mine and one of the co-founders, CEO in the board of TMA, mastermind behind actually the system of TMA. So, Andre, great to have you here today. Thank you for your time also at the weekend, because Andre is a big family guy with a lot of little kids and stuff, and big ones as well. And so weekend is something special. Nevertheless, thank you very much for being here with us today. And I would say the stage is yours. Andre, I put you in the focus. The stage is yours.
Thank you, Andreas. Yeah, I think I also want to stipulate on our friendship. And I am a global citizen. I'm working remotely. And at this point, I live in Portugal, and I'm sitting outside on my little cafe, enjoying the sun, a cup of tea, and enjoying myself and with this participation on this webinar, on this training. Andreas asked me to share my thoughts and why we are doing the things that we are doing. And I am very lucky with our board members. We are always thinking ahead. We are always thinking about what the world needs, and we are always focused on how can we innovate, how can we create, maybe even participate or share, make a little share on the social innovation that we think the world needs. And having said that, and maybe you have the same, and let's see if we can calibrate our thoughts a little bit around this topic. I do have a lot of thoughts about all the littles in the work, all the dilemmas that we are facing, in terms of, what kind of future are we going for? And what is the legacy that we are offering to our children and our grandchildren? And what kind of policies are we embracing, not only on the geopolitical level, but also in our company, to deal with the shifts, the rapid shifts in technology and cultures, particularly the speed of things, the dilemmas that we are experiencing. How are we dealing with that? And like Andreas said, showing the picture of a global world. That is how I feel I'm privileged. I'm privileged to go around in the world and meet many, many very talented, passionate professionals, inspiring leaders, but also a lot of busy managers working extremely hard, always constrained on their timetables. And of course, I also meet people, greedy shareholders, not working for the purpose, but the sole interest of getting more and more money. And I'm also happy to share with you that in many, many cases, this is only a very small amount of people who have that kind of negative thing. A lot of people are working with their hearts, trying to deal with the world they are living in. And in all my meetings that I have with the companies, I get more or less the same kind of questions all the time. How can we find? How can we connect? How can we bond our workforce and organize it in a way that we can really go for our purpose and meet our expectations and meet our goals? And what I also see in addition, there are recognizable patterns. If they want to change something, they go most of the time for changing the protocols, changing the systems, changing procedures, changing the way they are organizing themselves. And a lot of times it's going really on a dead end street. There's also another element to it, the urgency and the need to change so rapidly. And that is apparently something what I call apparently companies have lost the capacity to have a ecological evolution. They go from change to change, and they are not capable of being adaptable and dealing with what Andreas is calling the VUCA world. Because we want to fix everything, because we are working according to a kind of internalized mechanical approach, not only in the way of business, but around the world. We are trying to defragmentate the problems, dive in with expertise, and try to solve the little elements. And I believe that, in my opinion, we should go for a different approach. The questions could be like, well, for example, if you think where we are coming from the Industrial Revolution, and where the big thinkers like the Maslow, the Covey, the Ulrich, but also Taylor, Mintzberg, or Henry Ford, who was a genius, bringing the auto from a mechanical process in 12 minutes from nothing to becoming manufacturing a car. Great thinkers at that time, but the question is, are these thoughts, is this work still valid for the way we have to deal in our VUCA world? If you look at the Industrial Revolution and the way we are going forward, it's like we have the head of the organization and we have the body of the organization, and the bodies are just muscles. Now, Henry Ford made a very remarkable quote, and he said, like, I need muscles, but unfortunately I get the brains with it. Now, having said that, isn't it then time that we should, in this era, in this VUCA era, that we should consider a different approach? Shouldn't we have a moral obligation to ourselves to bring humanity back into our organizations? And shouldn't we look at organizations as organisms in cells, in capacity that works together, that develops together, that laughs together, that cries together? This is what I call the ecology. As an organization, I see different ecologies coming together in a natural way. And this is where we need to be adaptive, where we need to be flexible, where we have to be creative and communicate and collaborate to understand our world. And we have to have a clear vision in it. We have to bring our interpersonal, our moral, our existential, our mathematical, our linguistic intelligence together, and let's cooperate. Because bottom line, according to my belief, and I think to many others, if we connect ourselves together, we accomplish more. This world is not depending on being independent anymore. You cannot perform in this world all by yourself. We have to embrace this interdependency, where we collaborate, where we accept that we are a community doing things together, driven by a certain kind of purpose. And then, if you look at the governmental organization, you can ask the governance of an organization. You can ask yourself, what are they doing? Shouldn't they not maintain and promote an immune system for their people, like a cocktail of security and development guarantees? Because working guarantees cannot be provided anymore. You cannot get a lifelong contract anymore. But the essential need to develop people, I think that is the part of how we can survive and thrive our business forward. That immune system that should give people a meaning. They should give people a feeling of, I belong here. I am worth. There is my well-being. We are a group of diversity. And I think that that is the main character of a good governance. And maybe this is too beautiful, sounds too beautiful or too topic. I don't know, but I have the conviction. And luckily with me, not only my partners in TMA in Holland, the founding partners, but also my partners around the world, we would like to embrace interdependency and bring that to the world and make sure that people can be the best of themselves. Um, I don't think, if you're interested, there are so many surveys from the Big Five, from the McKinseys and the Boston Consultancy, when they're doing employee surveys, where people are stating, I'm doing what I have to do, but I'm not doing what I'm capable of doing. And if you take a deeper level, why is that the case? Then people say, because the system doesn't allow it. The protocol doesn't allow it. Management doesn't allow it. So when we talk about innovation and being adaptive and going forward, I think we have to unleash the potential of people, and go for an evolutionary growth where we are flexible and adaptable to it. And in that sense, this is where the TMA methodology stands for. We're trying to help people to be completely themselves. We're not saying you're good as you are, because that means you don't have to do anything anymore. No, that's not the case. Because we believe in the world we are living now, that things are moving so rapidly, changing so much, so many elements in our life, factors in our life are disrupted and coming to a new level. That means that as an individual, you have to stay at least aligned. You have to calibrate with the new technologies and et cetera, in order to have a position that is worthy where you can include yourself. And that is what TMA stands for. We're trying to help people to be themselves in a whole integrated way. And with all the tools and content that we are delivering, we are trying to support that. But the most important thing that we believe is, what is the mindset? What is the mindset of a community? Are we working with each other? Are we doing things for each other? Do we have a purpose? If that mindset is there, and we have the mindset that we believe that every human being is talented, the question is just, for what? How can an individual be valuable in that ecosystem? And I think we have the moral obligation as an organization to make sure that people can find their way. Some will do it by themselves. Some need some support and some need more support. It's just a normal bell. You have the early adapters, you have the early followers, you have the late followers, and of course on the outside you have the laggards and innovative people. But if we look at the main body, we need to create a movement where people can get the best out of themselves, and that is all in collaboration. So our TMA methodology stands for, who am I? And this is personal leadership. How do I tick? Under what conditions can I work best? How do I want to be approached? If you have that awareness and are able to communicate that in your own context, then you're getting somewhere. And then when it comes from personal leadership, it comes to leadership, where you transcend over to a next level, where you say, no, now I know how I tick, and now I know how I can work with other people. Because understanding how I tick gives me a perspective that I have at least an opening or willingness to understand how other people tick. And I think that is the basic of leadership. Treat people like they want to be treated. Treat people to get them to their full potential. And that is not according to how you want to be treated. So these are the elements that TMA stands for. Having this mindset, having then a good approach, a good working approach, and then choosing the right tool set. because the tool sets in TMA, I'm not saying that they are unlimited, but at least they are built up in an integrated mode, so that you can really connect business objectives with your workforce. And this is where TMA stands for. Is it an easy way of going forward? If you think about change management, of course, there's always a phase of letting go, or partly letting go what you already have, and going into a neutral zone where you try to experiment and figure it out, not really knowing where the new way will be, what it will be. But at least it's like navigating towards. Maybe you have to make a detour. But if you're not allowing people to, or you're not inspiring people to let go of their own mind guards, to let go of their restricted paradigms. And we all have restricted paradigms. We need to challenge our paradigms in order to go for an evolution. And as becoming a TMA expert, trained by Andreas, who has a huge amount of experience when it comes to leadership programs, when it comes to coaching and knowing what's going on with people. I hope that this training from Andy and Abdallah and his team will help you to lower your own mind guards and to look in a world that is prosperous, where we work for our legacy, where we can really contribute, that people are unleashing their talents and their full potential. This is where we take for. This is what we're trying to accomplish, to give people the power, the autonomy, the authenticity to really embrace interdependency. Until so far, this waterfall of my belief, my heart. Do you have any questions? Is this something that resonates with your own thoughts?
I would have one, Andre. Andre, what would you say would be the biggest recommendation out of your perspective for someone who is, let's say, who started to change this environment and who started to help other people just to have a look at this, to create interdependency, collaboration, cooperation. So what would be your biggest tip? What should people do who want to go into that?
That's a good question. If I look at where do I get my inspiration from, where do I get the courage to go forward? I do a lot of reading. And if I look at the book of Rutger Bregman, Humanity, where he really believes in the good of people. When I think of Nora Beetson, where she is stating that it's all about the relationship we have with our nature, that everything is an integrated whole. I mean, I am triggered by literature and those kind of key players in markets. When it comes to a personal level, I am extremely inspired by my children. If I look at my own family, how do I run my family? And am I really running my family, or am I doing that in collaboration with my spouse? And how do I engage my children? And children are so eager to learn. They are so willing of collaboration. To give you just a very practical example, one of my girls is good in making a meal. When I ask her, can you make a meal? And I collaborate with her. We have fun in the kitchen. She's learning. She's making a terrifically nice meal. I had to learn that I had to say like, oh, hold on. The onions should be chopped in this way, or the pepper in this way. I have to let her go and doing it together. Now, the funny thing is when I tell her that a couple of days later, you have to cook, because I cannot do it. And she doesn't want to. She doesn't have time for it, or she has other plans. She will do it, but the meal doesn't become that nice. It's just a delivery. There's no passion behind it. And what I learned from my kids, the openness, the willingness to learn, the willingness to explore, that is what I try to translate into in my working life. That gives me the opening not to inspire people because I want them to be inspired, but I'm trying to connect with people and see where is your inspiration coming from. What can you contribute? In my field of leadership, it's the same as what I do to my kids. If I cannot improve at least 20% of what you're doing, then I will kick shut. I will let you go, and we will review it together. So I think if you think about your role as a parent, I think that could be a huge inspiration in trying to do that with your working environment. Even if you're a professional, go have active listening, have non-judgment, a non-judgment approach, a no-blame approach, non-violent communication with Robertson, and also an extremely nice way of how to open up to people. So I think my biggest tip in going forward and accomplishing collaboration, tap into yourself and see yourself as a participant.
Cool. Thank you for that, Andre. Still a couple of questions in the chat. So that's a good idea because it's easier to bring that in a written form. Matthias just asked, I love the idea of bringing humanity into the business world. How do you create an awareness for this in the business world? So the awareness for humanity in the business world, right?
Mm-hmm. As we speak, I am active with the Ministry of Defense in Holland. And this is about the Navy, this is about the Air Force and the ground forces, around 60,000 people. And I've been in the Army myself for 18 years. And on an operational level, working with my own team, with my own what we call buttons, is very human based. I take responsible for your security and you take responsible for mine. We do things together. Now on an organizational level, on a governmental governance level, you can see there's a very strict hierarchy. And of course it is defendable. You can say like if the army says we have to go right, then everybody has to go right. You cannot have soldiers going left. That doesn't make sense. But in the way they have organized the whole structure, it's actually similar to what the Vatican has. We have a pope, we have the cardinals, we have the archbishop, we have the bishops, and everything is cascaded down in decision, but nothing goes up. Or when it comes up, it is fragmented and going down. So what do I do to create that mindset? Is to let people experience themselves what personal leadership actually means. So the leaders are going through our assessments, and then they say like, you know, these are your talents. Why don't you share your talents with a peer in a safe environment, the people you're working with, to see like how can you collaborate? And if you do that, you know, it's not about, you know, am I better than you? And if you look at the work of Covey, unfortunately, a lot of people are reading this. What are the 7 habits of high-performing people or successful people? It becomes a toxic competition in an organization. No, and that is not the case. It should be about collaboration. And when you share your talents, your drives with each other, and you start to communicate, how can we get the best out of each other? Because Andreas, you and I know if we are putting our brains together and we're doing something, we always come up with something good, right? And when it's not good, we evaluate and we bring it together, but we do that on an eye-to-eye level. And I think that is the way how to create a mindset, tapping in on your personal leadership and connecting your personal leadership with the personal leadership of others.
Great, great. Thanks for that. And what I heard out of these words, Andre, is also the topic of vulnerability. So that if you make yourself vulnerable as a leader, it's something completely different. So making it very easy, put your talents on the table and communicate these talents. And this form of vulnerability creates another form of trust. So that's actually something you mentioned as well. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And trust can only be organized in an environment of what we call psychological safety.
Exactly. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. And if I may refer to Amy Edmondson, has been writing about and doing a lot of research about psychological safety. That is also so important. Mm-hmm. And it really helps you if you have these kind of mindset. Your own family also need this psychological safety. Your children need that, where it's not only about, when I fall, is there somebody to help me to stand up again? It is also about, having the guts and having the environment where you can share your thoughts and ideas. But it's also helping the people who are not this extrovert or outstanding or outgoing to ask them, what are your thoughts and ideas? So I think this whole scenery of, how do we work in an organization, if you can reflect it in the way you want to have it, like your family is working. And there are always tensions, and there will always be disagreements. But disagreements cannot explode into violence or into threats or into dominance or into I am right and you're wrong. It is about connecting and having an understanding with each other.
So Susanne asks, which possibility can you see to work with a team that works with TMA to another team outside themselves? So actually, is that about the collaboration, right? So how bringing teams together, if I understood that right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What we do is we use the warm data. And, if you look at the configuration of a team, of course, it starts with, why do we have these teams together? What is the purpose, the goal, and what are we going to do together? Then it's about, what are the elements, the human elements that we need, and how can everybody feel that he's contributing based on his potential, but also based on the cultural side of it. And that is also an important thing. If you look at your personal drives, your talents, and you bring those talents together, it's a normal process that these configuration of talents and drives are the framework of the microculture in the team. So to give you an example, if the whole team is having a preference to work on a high level, then that kind of cultural aspect will be very dominant in that team. But if there is a blend where not everybody is working on eye level, then there is a toxic environment. So how do we make sure that people have that understanding in a team by using the warm data? And not only using the data, but also including the context in where people are working. And doing that with the people together. So one of my question marks to companies is, if I use the metaphor of sports, all players in the sports team know exactly what they have to do. They have the skills, the motorical skills. The question is, why would they train? And if you look at what the training goes about, it is about improving their, let's say, personal skills, but it's also improving teamwork. And what do we do in the business life? We go maybe once a year on a barbecue for some social cohesion, to establish some social cohesion. Why are we not going through scenarios? Why don't we train and have team sessions together so that there's a full understanding of full cooperation? Right? You could say, like, well, let's take the football market. Now the World Championship are there. Messi is a great player. If you look at his CV, why would he train? Why would he go out in the field every day to keep up and running, to make sure that he understands his teammates? Why? He has his skills. But in the business life, this is what we show. This is your profile. We expect that you can deliver it. So where is the development? And in that way, I think if you use the metaphor of sports, sports is creating an arena where development, individual and team development, goes hand in hand with performance. They evaluate every time they go into the field after a game. They come back, they evaluate, they adjust the training to make sure that the next time they can have a kind of a scenario that they can manifest their performance. So coming back to teamwork, we work with warm data. For you as an expert, I would trigger you to help teams to understand each other and to make sure that development, personal and team development, goes hand in hand with performance.
Thank you. Great. So this is actually something, if we come from the micro level, a micro culture even is something that is happening on a very personal, individual basis. And the microculture of you, Andre, and myself, and of Kurt or Roman or Susanne, it's an individual microculture that creates teams. So what you said, full cooperation by synchronization, by exchange, by doing team building, by getting each other known better. So that's something, if we just do not, let's say, neglect TMA, that's something where TMA can help. But this is actually the task of leaders to do that. Thomas asks, what are your thoughts and ideas how it would be possible to make this change faster?
Of course, everything is in context, but let me try to explain this. In my own encounters with all the companies that I am experiencing, and from the data that I guess from reading all the McKinsey reports and the Boston Consultancy, etc., you can see that most of the companies are based on the Ulrich model when it comes to HR. And Ulrich has created, I think, a very nice matrix on the people side and on the process side, and on the long term and on the short term. So on the process side, on the short term, it's all about the administrative HR role. And that is now delivered by success factors and work days and these kind of tools. On the process side, on the long term, it's all about strategy. What is your HR strategy? How do you align your people with the business objectives? And how do you work on employer branding, etc., etc.? Now, this is, I think, a very important thing for the acceleration question. When you look at the people side from HR, on the long term, Ulrich is calling this the change agent. And on the short term of people, he's calling HR the people champions. And I think there is the flaw in this time. If you really want to accelerate, we have to have different management styles, different leadership styles, where the leader or the team leader or the manager of a unit or the leader of a business line, they should be the people champions, not the HR, because the HR doesn't have any knowledge about the context, the technical skill, or hardly any knowledge about the technical skill. What they should do, I think that every team deserves a team coach. HR should not be the employee champion, it should be the team champion, helping the managers, team leaders to find each other, because this is where talent management is supposed to take place, in the work field, in the day-to-day practice. So if you want to accelerate, I think we are morally obligated as leaders to take that role and to become the employee champion, and not letting ourselves run by Excel sheets and the internalized logical mechanisms derived from the Industrial Revolution. We have to tap in as leaders, as employee champions to people. That will connect people. And I think there is where the acceleration is possible.
So this is also about more responsibility on the leader's side. And this is what we very often see, that this is not the left brain oriented typical management system that we see since generations, but there is happening a shift, and this is actually what is necessary for the VUCA world. And also people who are very much left brain oriented, very structured. We can even detect that in the TMA profile. If they know that this is the case, they can definitely change and adapt to these requirements. They can definitely find a different form of leadership style in order to make these things, these changes, as Thomas asked, to make them better, quicker, by just having that mindset of, let me be people champion, even if I'm more focused on processes so far.
Yeah. If I can add another aspect to it, when you talk about responsibility, when Europe was confronted with a Second World War and had to rebuild Europe again, you can actually say the policy of our governments was like, okay, we have a community, we have to build up things together, work hard, and we will take care of you in terms of pension and social security. And that is what you can see overall particularly in Europe. As I referred to Holland decided, I think 2 decades ago, okay, this kind of service mentality from the government is actually making the population a little bit numb. So we have to go to a society of participation. And that takes already 2 generations, and people in companies and in Holland, if I refer to Holland, if something is happening, they're still looking up. What are you going to do for me, mister? Instead of taking responsibility themselves. If I compare that to Denmark, for example, where I also lived 10 years, that is a completely different ballgame. The level of participation in Denmark is extremely high compared to the rest of Europe. When you talk about women's position, children's rights, everything is there on a participatory level. And I think that is also important. We have to create that mindset with people by giving them the activity, giving them the stimuli to be much more self-determined. Self-determination, I think, is an extremely important mechanism to go forward. Have a participatory way of working. That will give people the right stimuli, give them the right activity so that they can experience that things can work in a different way.
Thank you. Definitely. So I hope that we still can answer all of the questions. That could be quite hard. I just try to go through step by step. Andre, the next would actually be the question from Regine. Andre, what do you think will be the biggest challenge for TMA in the future?
Well, Regina, that's a nice question, and a challenging question. As I mentioned before, me and my colleagues, when we have a discussion together about our business, about our profit and loss account, or it takes us 2-3 minutes, and then again we see all kinds of new possibilities for innovation, small developments, small tweaks of our tools. And I think in general, to stay in sync with the needs of the market will always be our biggest challenge, but also our biggest passion to go there. This is what we are trying to accomplish. And on a technical level, I think it's not only for us, but I think for most of the elements of life, it is connectivity. As I said before, and I'm really an adept of Nora Beats, everything is related to each other. And if you look at nature, everything is changing by a little disruption of a small element. Think about our ocean. When in the Caribbean, I do love diving, and a couple of years ago, the lionfish got imported in that area, and that changes the ecological system on the corals so much. It's a big threat, and of course, there will be coming a new natural habitat, and being capable of seeing those kind of elements up front and respond to that, I think that is the biggest challenge that we have. I'm not afraid that TMA will not have this force, this driving force that we will try to develop and innovate as much as we can. But seeing the things coming and being adaptive to that, I think that is in general a challenge that we all are encountering. I know that it's a very abstract answer, Regina. I do know that we are very open-minded, and we love the feedback of our clients and our partners, because this is where we think it's such a source for innovation. But I cannot formulate a better answer than making sure that you can respond, adapt to the needs of the market. I think that is the biggest challenge that we have.
Mm. This is actually leading us to the question that Paul has. Thank you, Paul, for that, because it makes perfectly sense in the complete ecosystem of TMA. Where do you see the biggest challenge nowadays in move towards this ecological evolution?
I don't want to sound too much as an idealist, but I think what the world is facing now is the division of wealth, which is unfair. If you see what happened during the pandemic, the richer got even more rich. The poorer got more poor. If you see now what the Ukraine war is causing when it comes to the winter, for people that they want. This is the funny thing. When the pandemic was there, everybody was happy to work at home, or a lot of people were. Now it's almost seen they want to go back to the office so they don't have to pay the heating in the house. So coming back to that, what is the biggest threat? I think it's the division of wealth and well-being. The rich are becoming richer. There's so much greed coming on the whole financial system. If you think about this, companies like Microsoft or Apple, they buy another company for, let's say, 60 billion euros. They have the amount on the bank, but they're taking a loan from the government or from the financial institutions for an interest rate of 0.005% a year, and it's and then the billions are deductible from the taxes. So they have the money. The government, the financial market is pressing the money. They have all the benefits. And what you see with the people who are working hard to pay their mortgage, they're getting more and more poor. You see, that's declining. And I think the greed is the biggest threat in our world. If you look at the climate change conference now in Egypt, the outcome is so disappointing. Why? Because the captains of the industry want to maintain their industries. And I think that, if we, as human beings, reduce our consumerism. Um, and I can see that in the new generations. This is where my hope lies. For the new generations, it's not about possession, but it's about accessibility. They want to have access to things. They don't want to possess things anymore. And I think this is hopefully how the world will change and will deal with the greed. I know that's a very idealistic answer, but
no, it's not. I think that this is actually, if we go into the Generation C or the developments that we see in the younger generation up to the age of 25, which is representing Generation C, then this is something that is coming up much more into cooperation, collaboration, sensitivity topics, and this is something actually coming back to TMA again. The collaboration, communication aspect, understanding each other better, synchronizing better with each other.
Yeah.
This is something, to say technically, how we can deal with this VUCA environment. And Paul asked that question. The ecological evolution needs to be supported by organizations, otherwise it will not work. And we as trainers, we as coaches, we have a voice in that, and we have an influence if we go into organizations and support leadership style that go into that direction of cooperation and collaboration. I'm 100% convinced of that.
Yeah. And when you think about the human strength by being empathic, being intuitive, daring on your intuition, being creative, those are the elements that we should really unleash.
Thank you for that. I just disappeared, Andre. Just looking for the next question, which is from Wolfgang. Wolfgang asked, I'm sure you have met hundreds of leaders so far. Yep, this is definitely true for Andre. What was the most inspiring characteristic they had in common? That's a good question. Out of your perspective, the most inspiring characteristic that leaders have in common that you met?
Intention. The intention of doing well, of doing good, being good for their people. But the harsh reality of shareholders' values, of restriction by protocol procedures, by system. I hardly meet leaders who are not interested in the well-being of their people. But then the competitive edge that they should show, display. To give you just an example from the military again. I know that when you're becoming an officer, up to the rank of major, lieutenant colonel, you're all comrades. You're all on the same level, and there's a huge amount of people that we need. But then you have to go to what they call higher schooling to have the opportunity to become a general. And there when it becomes toxic, because the only way to get up is to be better than the other. So make sure that you choose your files, your dossiers that are successful and not fail. And hoping that others will pick up something in their portfolio that will fail. Because if others fails, you will rise. And I think that is still actually present in a lot of organizations. Where you need your network and to make sure that you're not failing. And I think that is the biggest issue that creates a competitive, toxic environment for leaders to be the leaders that they actually intentionally want to be.
This is something I can 100% support. I just had that conversation yesterday with one of you guys, one of the participants here, that so many leaders, I would not say are corrupted, but yes, I would say by the system. and they know that there needs to be another form of leadership. But very often, from a specific point, as you mentioned that, Andre, they are shifting. And this is strange to see, out of different reasons, sometimes out of pure fear, sometimes out of political reasons and motivations. And this should actually not happen anymore. So we will see.
But also, do not underestimate, Agnes, if I may add that, because of the fixed paradigm that people have. You know, when you grow up in such an environment, this becomes your reality. This becomes your truth. And it becomes something like you do unconsciously. Right? I see all my fellow leaders, very harsh and maybe a little bit extreme example. All the leaders are shouting to the people. Then I have to shout too. It's a normal human mechanism. We are adapting to the social environment, and to stand out for that and say, like, and ask yourself the question, stop, is this really fitting me? And I think this cognitive dissonance, this is not what I want, but I do it, or I want to do it, but I'm not executing it. This cognitive dissonance is also because of the paradigms that we are living in.
Definitely.
So as coaches and trainers, I think it's very important to help people to lower their mind guards and to open up their paradigms again.
True. This is directly exactly the leading to the next question, which Johanna asks. She asks, mindset is one thing. Isn't trust the second pillar to create this environment?
Yeah, I would say, Johanna, without trust, nothing goes. If you don't trust your partner, if you don't trust your coworkers, if you don't trust that you can address a topic, or if you cannot trust that your feedback is appreciated as something productive and positive, it doesn't go. For me, you know, this psychological safety, this trust, this trustworthy relationship, if that is not 100% there, then people will shy away from really showing what they really mean, what their real intentions are. I mean, even in your family life with my kids, you know, I have daughters now of 12 and 14 years old. Hormones start to play, and they try to loosen the band with the parents, right, in a very nice way, hopefully. But there are some points where they don't trust you anymore. To give you an example, my girlfriend is the principal of the school where my kids go to. And once my girlfriend made a mistake in using their feedback to address it to the teacher, and it looked back to them. From that moment on, there was really a cut in the trust, and she got it full blown back in her face again. So you can, for me, that is also a signal like how sensitive people are if they are not trusted, and if there's no trustworthy relationship. So yes, Joanna, for me, it's not the second. For me, it's the premises.
This leads us to the question of Thomas, which is comment and question in the same. I'm just skipping the comments because I would just recommend you guys read the comments that your colleagues are writing into the chat. So just skipping the comments and just go into the questions. And Thomas asks a question combined with a comment. I think if there would be a way to get the business leaders look on the long term and not to be targeted driven short term, it could start. And our kids are key elements too. My kids teaching me every day. What can TMA contribute to that from short term to long term?
Of course, we can say, like, you know, what is your strategy for the long term, and how can we help you with competence management and with the data in order to see that your workforce is aligned and how to stay up and running. That is from a, what I would call, technical point of view. Yes. When it comes from a practical point of view, an operational point of view, um, maybe I should refer to a keynote of Simon Sinek. And he says, like, just think about a car. And we're having passengers on board. We're all in the same car and we want to go to a certain kind of destination. Is it then that we have to drive from A to B? Because there might be a roadblock where you have to take a detour. There might be a mechanical problem where you have to stop. And yes, of course, you need fuel. And he says, like, maybe fuel should be considered as money. Do we have enough money to make it work? People are not in the car for the fuel. People are in the car to go for the destiny. And what is the course? And what Simon Sinek says, like the why, the purpose, where are we trying to go for? That is what unites the people. That is what will bring them together. And on a technical part, yes, we can do that to make sure that, you can analyze the data, you can clarify to people, what is your role in the car? Are you the navigator, or you the driver, or you take care of the logistics, or you are the financial? We're all in a community. And we have to be sure that we are very clear in where we want to go. The course should not be linear. We should not expect that. And we should take it day by day. I don't have a glass ball to look at the future and say, like, where does TMA stand for? And what kind of position do we have? Do we have a revenue stream of 50 million or 60 or 100? It's not about the money. We are driven by our purpose. We make a promise to ourselves and a promise to our market, and we're trying to be as adaptive as we can to make sure that we stay on track, and that we sometimes have to take a detour or take a pause. Yes, absolutely.
Super. So I just go into the next question. Maybe quickly, what Thomas added, can you please tell us 3 most inspiring books? So very practical, your 3 most inspiring books that you can recommend us. I just write it down here, just as a literature tip. Books from André.
I would say Rutger Bregman, Humanity, A New Human History. The latest work of Nora Beetson. Simon Sinek, The Why is, I think, inspiring. And then when it comes to organizations, maybe this one is even better. No, not better, but from a different angle. It is Frederic Laloux, Reinventing Organizations. And Frederic Laloux is talking about the different kinds of organizations, from the command and control to the command and project, to the sense and response, to the holacracy, and also to the teal organizations. Building it up from a very, command and control is very hierarchical, and the teal organization is about very self-determined teams working together.
Thank you very much. Perfect.
Yeah.
So to fill the last couple of minutes, I just do it very democratically, step by step. Nina asks, in contribution to Thomas' question, how to tackle the generational challenge in an organization, differing values, communication styles, sense of entitlement, etc. Yes, what a topic. So the generational challenges, how can, I would say, can TMA help? No, I would not. How can we tackle that, as Nina asks?
I'm 60 years old, and my wingman is sitting next to you, Abdallah. He's definitely from a different generation. And the amount of exchange we have in learning, it is phenomenal. It is really phenomenal. So, if you look at the let's say, the established generations, um, the idealist, uh, the cynical generation, the optimistic generation, the realistic, the characteristics of the millenniums, the realistic part. If you think about this whole concept, do we need people with idealistic approaches? That would be great. Do we need people who will always ask the question and be more cynical and skeptical? That is a good added value. Do we need the opportunities to say, like, we see an opportunity and we go for it? That would be great. A constellation of the three of them. And then if you have the new generation, the realistic part, people, wow, isn't that a great configuration? And then when the new generations comes in, like, and I don't know exactly what are characterizing them, but you know what I just said, like, they don't need possession, but they need accessibility. I think bringing those generations together on a high level, I think that is fantastic if that can work. So we should not say, like, because you're like this and that, we cannot cooperate. It's still about, you know, getting together, having an open ear to each other, having a fair hearing in your process. I think that is how it can work. And again, and this may sound maybe a little bit too overwhelming or too pushy, but it starts with personal leadership. Knowing how to take, knowing how to connect with other people is the most important part. And embracing the different generations in your organization is brilliant if you're capable of doing that. But then it should be there on all levels. On all levels. If you just have one or two characteristics in your board, you're out. And that is also a funny thing, and I think you know this, Andreas, because I am 60 years old. Do I then have exactly the characteristics of my generation? Or did I pick up something more? Well, I'm a little bit late, baby boomer, eh? From 62. Oh, I'm still
around that.
around that. But, you know, having this open mindset, you can also adapt the characteristics of other generations. It's not for nothing that they say, like, you know, the 50s of today are the 40s of tomorrow. There. So having a policy on generations, great, but make sure that they are collaborating on all levels. Or at least stepping in. And Abdallah can actually prove that, because if he's delivering work to me, sometimes I'm saying, go ahead, not knowing if it really brings something. And sometimes I don't even understand him. You know, for me, everything is still a little bit in a linear process. We have to take step by step, and I have to see the following line. Where Abdallah, the young guy, is non-linear. He's going laterally from A to B. And the things he's picking up from the internet and all the content and the artificial intelligence, I learned so much from him.
It's something about connection, because I would say that I just did this little overview here a couple of weeks ago in a training, and this was the outcome, that the leadership task basically is to connect these generations, bring them together, and this is not only an internal task, but also for us as coaches and trainers, to create this platform of cooperation and collaboration by tools, techniques, by support, by clarity, by inspiring people, and from time to time also put the fingers very, very much into the wound so that it really hurts, because very often organizations will not change in another way.
That is what I appreciate so much in your approach, Andreas. And I know that I'm putting you now a little bit on the spotlight. But your approach about the VUCA, and when you talk about the C, it's about collaboration. It's the C from connecting. It is the C from communication. And I think that is what we need for leaders. That is what we can ask leaders. You know, use your human skills in that. because you have.
Yeah. I would love to address one final question, because this is a technical question, and I think that this would be important to just understand a couple of your inspirational topics that you mentioned, Andre. Stefan asks, what do you mean by mind guards? What exactly is this? And then after that answer to that question, I would leave you into the lunch break altogether.
Yeah.
So mind guards, you mentioned that expression quite often. So what do you mean by that?
We have a kind of picture around of the world, the context we are living in. And having this understanding, this is what I call the paradigm. This is how I understand my world. And when something is disrupting my picture of this world, I am reluctant to open up for that. One of the reasons, for example, that change management is always building up some anxiety and some reluctance, because it's changing the safety of people. Because you have to let go of something that was safe for you. And this is what I call the mind guard. So there is actually in your brain a kind of a process that says, like, when you're told that your reality can be seen in a different way so that it can help you to go forward, people say, yeah, I'm fine. But to bring it into practice, they have to let go of something. And that is what we call the mind guards. Something is holding back in doing what you cognitionally actually understand.
I just draw a little picture for that, and that will lead us into the lunch break, guys, which is the very much famous table of Paul Watzlawick, who said that in reality is not really real, which is the principle of Pippi Longstocking. Andre, you know this Swedish character. And she said, I just create the world like I want to have it. Ich mache mir die Welt so, wie sie mir gefällt. Das Pippi Langstrumpf-Prinzip. And the idea, Andre, I can switch in German. Is that fine?
Well, yeah, absolutely.
Super, super. Du hast das Thema Mindguard auch mit dieser Einschränkung von bestimmten Denkebenen beschrieben, und das führt mich direkt auch in den Nachmittag heute, wenn wir uns TMA nochmal in der Vertiefung auch von dem Selbstverständnis her anschauen. Das hier ist für mich das beste Beispiel für das Schaffen von eigenen Realitäten. Der Paul Watzlawick hat das so wunderbar formuliert mit diesem Bild des Tisches. Um diesen Tisch sitzen 4 Personen und auf dem Tisch steht eine Karaffe mit Wasser und ein Glas. Der hier rüberschaut, aus seiner Perspektive, der sagt also ganz eindeutig, steht die Karaffe auf der rechten Seite und das Glas steht links. Und darüber brauchen wir nicht zu diskutieren, weil da gibt es keine Diskussion. Karaffe rechts, Glas links. Der sitzt hier und sagt, Moment, also ganz eindeutig steht die Karaffe links und das Glas steht rechts. Was für einen Blödsinn redest du mal wieder? Ich kenne das jeden Tag, mit dir diese Diskussionen zu führen, unerträglich. Und der sagt, also meine Lieben, nur um da mal zu intervenieren, das Glas steht vor der Karaffe, das möchte ich nur, und in Wirklichkeit seid ihr blind, habt Tomaten auf den Augen und habt überhaupt keine Ahnung von der Welt. Und der hier sitzt, sagt, also ich muss mal in Corona-Zeiten anmerken, es wäre ganz gut, wenn wir ein Glas hätten. Ich sehe nämlich nur die Karaffe und wir können nicht alle aus der Karaffe trinken, sonst wären wir alle krank. Die Frage ist, wer hat recht? Also in Wirklichkeit ist die Wirklichkeit nicht wirklich. Und das ist für mich so ein wunderbares Prinzip auch von Mind Guards, dass ich mir einfach die Welt so schaffe, wie ich natürlich, das wisst ihr alle als Profis, wie ich erzogen wurde, wie meine Werte, meine Überzeugungen, meine Normen funktionieren. Und wir werden uns das heute Nachmittag mal gemeinsam anschauen in Form dieses berühmten TMA-Eisberg-Modells. Das nur so als kleiner Teaser für den Nachmittag. Lieber André, 1000 Dank, dass du heute hier warst bei uns, und schade, dass wir jetzt uns nicht noch 2, 3 bis 7 Stunden Zeit nehmen können, sonst würde der Zoom-Call auch nicht mehr aufzeichnen, wie die Denise schon festgestellt hat. die restlichen Fragen noch zu beantworten. Ich sehe gerade hier mit Entsetzen 15 neue Nachrichten, also ganz viele Fragen noch und Kommentare. Sorry, dass ich dir an der Stelle jetzt im Sinne der biologischen Ver- und Entsorgung abbreche. André, vielen herzlichen Dank. Ganz herzliche Grüße nach Portugal, wo du
Danke.
einen Tag noch genießen wirst. Ein Winken an dich. Vielen Dank. Und ich glaube, es war sehr, sehr inspirierend, auch sehr schön, dass du bei uns heute dabei warst und dir die Zeit auch genommen hast. Alles Liebe.
Es war
Und
ein Vergnügen. Ciao.
Ciao, ciao. Ciao.
Ciao.